front to call this a debate, because the Minister didn't tell us any of the substance of the negotiations. But of course there is no debate, is there? No debate in the national parliaments, no informed opinion in the press, no debate at all. And why? Because this whole treaty is being put together in secret. And that is being done because you don't want to involve the citizens of Europe. You're fearful that the more they find out about your grandiose plans, the more likely they are to vote no. And what's worse still is the downright dishonesty with which this whole process is being pursued. For Angela Merkel, in a letter, to talk about the proposal, to use different terminology without changing the legal substance, I mean, it's Alice through the looking glass stuff, isn't it? It's the twisting of language. It is the deliberate attempt to stop there being free and fair referendums in European countries. It's your plan to act like a bulldozer, just to sweep aside the French referendum result, the Dutch referendum result, to pursue your political goals without taking the people with you. Well, I've no doubt you think that you're going to get away with it. But if you're proud of your European project, if you're true Democrats, then you join me in the call for let the people decide their own future, don't foist it upon.
Mr. President, since the 1970s, British politicians have sworn the EU isn't about political domination or loss of sovereignty, yet EU presidents state we pooled our sovereignty and have a European empire, which makes 75% of our law. This treaty signs away our ability to rule ourselves, yet a BBC poll says 84% of the British people want no more power surrendered. Like mushrooms, the British people are left in the dark and fed manure. The Conservatives, through the EPP group, gave their allowances to the Yes campaign in Ireland, then deviously promised to allow a referendum, but only if Ireland votes no again. Mr. President, behind the backs of the British people and with no mandate, the Westminster parties have sold their country away, while the polls show 55% want to leave the EU. Never before in the field of human politics have so many been conned by so few.
Es wurde der Vertrag inhaltlich diskutiert in Irland, insbesondere die neoliberale Festlegung, Militarisierung und vor allem der undemokratische Charakter. Ich glaube, was notwendig ist, ist, dass das einfach akzeptiert wird, dieses Votum. Der Vertrag ist tot und es bedarf eines anderen Vertrages. Und wir werden die Reihe von undemokratischen Äußerungen, die hier stattgefunden haben, durchaus auch zur Kenntnis nehmen und dokumentieren. Vielen Dank.
Ministers will sign a final treaty. None of them have read. They sign a bundle of amendments they cannot even understand. Yesterday the Danish Parliament refused a referendum on a treaty they have not read. They breached the Danish constitution. All negotiations in the ITC and the linguistic lawyers group have been kept absolutely secret towards many members in this Parliament. First, they undo 2 referendums rejecting the constitution. Then they negotiate in secret and keep the content under a new name. The Lisbon Treaty will dissolve the existing EU, establish a new state with joint citizenship, legal personality and all tools of nation states. Most laws will be adopted by civil servants in secret. Democratic deficit will grow. My group proposed to cancel the signature until you have finally read the final text. In a peaceful manifestation against a celebration of a charter which is part of a constitution where I cannot even get the consolidated text and see the relevance and the meaning. And you cannot as well. What you are going to sign tomorrow is a treaty none of you have read simply because it's not possible to read it. You conquer our voting time to celebrate a victory over democracy, and therefore I will not attack my colleagues. But I have to say to Mr. Schulz, I did not take part in crime. I understand it entirely, but we have in Denmark a different tradition. So I was there with my T-shirt calling for a referendum, and I think all of us should call for a referendum. This is the democracy norm you are defending. Thank you. This mini treaty will now be around 3,000 pages instead of the 560 pages in the rejected constitution. The majority has the right to endorse the treaty, but you have no right to refuse a normal parliamentary scrutiny of this Lisbon Treaty. I've asked more than 700 serious questions to different articles. You don't know the answers. You approve secrecy instead of transparency. You approve a reduction of parliamentary democracy instead of insisting on this Parliament's right to represent our voters, scrutinize on behalf of our voters, question the executive on behalf of the 500,000 citizens we represent.
That the reason you've acted in this arbitrary fashion, tearing up the rule of law, is because you are taking out on us the surrogate contempt you feel for the national electorates who keep voting no on the Lisbon Treaty whenever they're given the opportunity. If I'm wrong, prove me wrong by holding the referendums that you used to support when you thought you could win them. Put the Treaty of Lisbon to the people. Pactio o Lisipiensis.
Mr. President, an absolute majority is not the same as the rule of law. I accept that there is a minority in this House in favour of a referendum, that there is a minority in this House against the ratification of the Lisbon Treaty. But this House must nonetheless follow its own rule books. And by popular acclamation, to discard the rules under which we operate is indeed an act of arbitrary and despotic rule. It is only my regard for you, Mr. Chairman, and my personal affection for you that prevents me from likening it to the Ermächtigungsgesetz of 1933, which was also voted through by a parliamentary majority, and I ask this House not to vote it. You don't say that.
Cette élection est intolérable. Nous allons prendre des sanctions internes au niveau du groupe et je vais demander l'exclusion de M. Hannen au niveau de notre groupe.